So today we're chatting about, this is week 3, right? And then we're skipping next week. And then we're going to have a meeting the following week. So after this week, we will have gone through all of the pieces and parts of the customer success module that's currently out and running. And then in 2 weeks, we will come back again on April 6th to chat about the release that's going out this weekend that has some of the momentum tracking pieces added, the KPIs, et cetera, around on the scheduler report, et cetera. So I really wanted to give everybody time to have a look at that, poke around in it, and then see what else will come from this, because we're going to start talking about the reporting that will come beyond it. So today is stack alignment and goals, and that rounds out all of the button clicks. So by the time you leave today, you should have at least documentation and a video of us chatting and walking through the pieces and parts. I've got just a couple of slides today, then we'll dive in. We're going to build your stack. We're going to go through a single client and create their stack. Steve, I'm going to make sure to show you how you can organize the stack in the order that you want. It's not the way you want, but you can at least rearrange it, which is step 1 of a multi-step process for sure. And then we're going to talk about goals and then future development toward what we're going to do with goals, but some conversations around that. So I want to start with first the compelling reason of why stack is important. I know I'm preaching to the choir. That's why you're in customer success. And that's why you go and sell your standards and services as a SKU. But sometimes your clients need some hints along the way. So I'm going to give you some talking points that you're welcome to steal. And then for goals, I want to talk about kind of how to move the conversation beyond technology to what the client cares about. So again, slides in the platform, and then I will stay on hopefully, and for folks that have more than a few buttons to click that can help troubleshoot anybody at the end. So first, we present at a lot of Evolve rooms. If you're in Evolve, I'll apologize in advance. You've already heard this. I've been in 23 rooms, so there are good odds I've talked to 1 or 2 of you about this before. But Paul Dipple is the one that developed the SLI, the sleek index, the service leadership index that ConnectWise talks about. A lot of the coaches have their own version of this, but their look at operational maturity really has 170 questions on these are the things that you can do in your business to move the needle, to be more operationally mature, get a higher valuation. He came into the peer group, the vendor peer group Nick and I are a part of, did not know what we did. So he wasn't saying this to make us feel good about ourselves. But he said of the 170 questions on their managed service provider service leadership index, the 2 that are most important are these 2 that are on the screen. What percentage of your clients purchase your full stack, and are you doing true QBRs for all of your clients? So let's think about this. First, what percentage of your clients are on your full stack? We know that's important. They're more secure, stable, scalable, and supportable. That's why you have a stack, right? If it's your preferred firewall of choice, when that one has an issue, you know how to solve it, as opposed to having to go Google 37 different varieties of firewalls or whatever the case may be. True? So full stack, critical. The next one is interesting. Are you doing true QBRs for all your clients? We talked the first week that not everybody truly deserves a quarterly business review. And Paul Dipple speaks of this at a fully operationally mature 5.0 unicorn where there are never any required service tickets. Also, all of your clients are paying $300 per seat per user type of thing, right? So we know that's not the full case for everybody. And so that is why that's more of an aspirational piece. Really what we want is all business review, a business review for all clients at the cadence that is important to them and you to help move the needle on them. Like I said, I visited one of our partners yesterday who invited me out to talk with their team, and we had this very conversation, and they wanted to point out that if a client is really not aligned with their services yet, somebody onboarding, case in point, or somebody that they just haven't circled the wagons with in a long time, they might warrant a quarterly business review until they do get aligned. Matt, I know when you gave us the quote for the book that you said it's really important to get one early on in talking with a client so you don't have misaligned vision, right? It was, and feel free to say it in your words so I don't have to, but I think what you were telling me is that if you go 90 days before talking to them or 6 months before talking to them about where they are and what you're doing for them, they might have had a different impression about what was going to happen. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. There was just that fear of you're thinking you're focused on the important things they're going to be excited about, and then you go and meet with them. They're like, "Man, I thought you guys were working on this other thing or whatever." Yeah,
I wanted a new website. Now I'm all secure and I don't have a new website. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, that rung true with them yesterday too. So they thought that was, and they wanted to point out that while segmenting them by by MRR and value is critical, keep in mind that something like onboarding would move them to that high value, high effort quadrant because you don't want them at risk until they jostle into place and get aligned to your services. So this is what we're gunning for today, right? We're going to build out our stack and align recommendations so we can build the opportunities so you can get this view. To get there, we're going to talk about two things. First, a pop quiz. If you've seen it before, no cheating. Again, if you're involved, for sure we've done it. No kidding, steal this because it might help you have this conversation with your partners. So I'm going to show you symbols for 30 seconds. So hands up, or I can at least trust you to not be taking notes on this. I need you to memorize the symbols. I'll give you 30 seconds. All right. So what was the A? What were the lines around the A? You can draw them in the air. Okay. And how about the D? Casey's already like a lot of just sign language in general. And then if I get all the way down to the bottom of the alphabet, then, or not at the bottom of the alphabet, but the last one on the screen, folks, I can occasionally get, if I give 60 seconds, I can occasionally get, someone that can give me all of them. But when I say, will you remember this tomorrow? I get the no. And then will you remember it in a month? And they mock me, right? But I'm going to show you this again. And this time I'm only going to give you 10 seconds and I bet you all can memorize it. And now I'm sure you're thinking this is some voodoo trick for sure. Yep. So this is head nods. I see where we're going with this, right? So now didn't even give you 10 seconds. So now you can, in your head, where's the E? What are the boxes around the E? Right? The full square in the middle. So if I asked you tomorrow, could you do this? If I asked you in 6 months, could you do this? I know for a fact you can because I show Ray Orsini this to explain Common Core math 2.5 years ago. And every time he sees me, he'll be like, have Morning explain Common Core math. It'll make a lot more sense to you with tic-tac-toe boxes. So the reason I explain this, or the reason I share this, is if we look at this one, that is like buying individual technology services piecemeal. They buy something from Casey and something from John and something from Matt and something from JMac, etc. And it doesn't all fit together, right? But if we go in and sell a single framework, it makes sense to you, right? And so therefore, that's why it's supportable, scalable, etc. So sometimes if they need an understanding of I'm just going to go buy this at Best Buy, right? I get significant eye rolls when I hear, we're just going to go pick up a router at Best Buy and I'm just going to order some PCs off of Amazon and I'm going to go buy this from here. And you can just do this for me. But I've got my nephew who's going to do this for me, right? It feels very cobbled together. But when you have a framework, which is exactly what your stack is, it all falls into place. You know how to support it. And it doesn't matter to them what's in I or D. And if you swap out I or D, you can still support it because you've got it aligned to your framework. So I think this is a good way to tell a story. I've convinced boards of ed things with this particular activity. And so I just think this is a good one to have that alignment conversation. The next piece of the conversation I want to have is around my squirrel email from yesterday, where the theme of my squirrel email was basically that I taught pre-calculus by making my rectilinear motion lesson about squirrels getting hit by cars or not getting hit by cars if they were good at calculus, right? But that's only because high schoolers care about driving cars and really don't care about rectilinear motion. So when you go to talk to businesses, they don't care about the technology per se. They just care about their business outcomes that you're delivering with technology, right? And so how do we make the QBR about them as opposed to the technology? So again, I've been invited to come. I think I'm now on my 4th or 5th MSP where they've asked me to come to their office or done a virtual keynote kickoff for their team to talk about how to talk to their clients about technology. And I start with this conversation. Again, some of you have heard it, my apologies, but I like to get everybody on the same baseline. This is Maslow's hierarchy. This is what everybody's needs, right? Starting at the bottom, food, water, shelter. If you are missing any of those, you can't worry about anything further up the pyramid. If you are hungry, right? If I hadn't eaten lunch, I'd be grouchy right now. The next up is security. If you're not safe, you can't worry about anything else. If you think you're going to get run over, you're not worrying about your job, right? So food, safety, baseline expectations, everybody's needs. But if those needs are met regularly, then folks can worry about their family, friends, relationships, right? Then they can worry about their mastery, self-respect. That is, do I have a job I like? Do I have hobbies I like to do? That type of thing. And what they're really aiming for is the top of the pyramid, self-actualization, becoming the best version of you can be. And as I always say, in 2023, the most basic need is now actually Wi-Fi, right? If we don't have that, we just can't focus on anything else. But businesses have these same needs. So let's talk through them in terms of a business. In terms of what you would deliver in a business review. If you go into a business review only planning to talk to them about uptime, what are they thinking? That's a baseline need. It's 2023, Marnie. Are we really going to spend an hour and a half talking about keeping my computer going all the time? I expect it to turn on with the exception of a rare day, right? Next up is it safe? Keep it working. Well, it's keep working, the security of it. Again, this is a baseline need, so it's important. It is where risk is aligned, but if they're not a Department of Defense contractor, it's not what is most important to them. So it's a baseline need that must be met, but it's not something they want to talk about all day, every day, right? We did have a guy break into our house, and so I do have concerns around security. We ended up letting him into the house and washing his clothes and then calling the cops when we realized he was a felon. Another story for another day. But I don't spend all day, every day thinking about security because I've taken care of that as a baseline expectation, right? So if you want the business owners at the table for a conversation in a business review, we need to work our way up this pyramid and look at the question, is it part of the process? Is IT part of your process to deliver better business? What does that look like? You have a lot of data that they can use to drive better business. We've talked about the total cost of ownership budget tons of times on our workshops, et cetera, because you're the only ones that are really well suited to deliver a full budget forecast to your partners, right? So you have data that could be useful to them. That is suddenly more interesting to the CEOs you're talking to. Does IT help me win? Is it a competitive differentiator? And then lastly, is it the gold standard? Am I becoming the best version of my company that I can be? Those are interesting conversations for your partners. So I'll tell you a story about my dentist. Again, last story of the day, then we'll move on. But if you haven't heard it, I think it proves the point nicely. Work with a lot of you who work with a lot of dentists, and a lot of them use Dentrix. So that is what I knew when I went to my dentist in December. I popped out when they took the apron off my neck, and I looked down at the monitor, and I expected to see the word Dentrix on the monitor, and I did not. And so I had to say to the dentist, hey, I work with a lot of managed service providers, and I expected to see Dentrix here. And he said, oh no. So I live in a small town. He told me the name of the managed service provider who I know. And he's like, oh, well, let me tell you what he hooked me up with. And then he drags me around the office and shows me the 3 different machines and how they're all networked together. And remember, Marnie, when I used to have to shove the impressions in the roof of your mouth and the pink goo came out and you would gag on it? Well, I don't have to do that now because I've got this. It's connected. It automates billing. It's easier for you. It's faster for us. And it's even less expensive. So everybody wins. So he is insanely excited when his managed service provider has his business reviews, because he's helping drive better business. He's just not trying to be a small town dentist. He's trying to be the gold standard of dentists in my area. So he's quite excited to talk about his managed service provider. I had to make sure to reach out to the managed service provider and tell him, like, hey, you've got a raving fan. You should get a referral from my dentist, because he's definitely interested. So if we can drive the conversation toward that, with goals, with their goals, right, aligned to technology strategic initiatives, that's when we're moving the needle. We did one of our weekly workshops about this. Matt was on it, Trisha was on it, Greg was on it, and we talked about the types of questions that folks ask to have the business conversation as opposed to the technical one. So when we send out the slide deck, I have some on the screen. How's your business changing over the next 12 to 18 months? Are you planning an expansion? Are you downsizing? Are you hiring? What's changing in your industry or becoming commoditized? And what's something that you would like technology to do for you? And one of the things that Trisha shared was that she starts with their strategic goals in mind. So on the left side, you can see 2 strategic goals: continue to grow through acquisition and revitalize the organization with a new brand. And then she aligns technology goals to that. So she started with, this is your priority. Because of this, we're going to develop a playbook for gathering information required for technology and service integration, define a technology and security standard for new acquisitions to determine a clearer path to necessary infrastructure changes, and plan for underlying technology changes to email, Active Directory, internal applications, and website. Not being an MSP, even I can picture which projects are automatically following from those technology goals. And that first one, in the continue to grow through acquisition, if they agree to this, what I know is that if that company acquires a new company, Trisha now has approval to just rip and replace to her set of standards, right? Because she's already defined what the services are going to be. So that's the importance of goals. And again, Maslow's hierarchy shows, I think, the importance of why we need to be talking about that. So we're going to hop into the platform and start with the stack piece, but then I'm also going to show you how we're tracking, how we're going to be able to track goals in the platform. So if you haven't logged in, please do. We'll play along at home. Again, to access customer success, click on BCIO and head on over. So the very first thing we're going to do is actually build our stack, which means you need to come up with a name for the stack. So would love to hear, and it put in chat or shout it out, good either way. What do you all call do you have a base package of services, or like all of the precious metal services, bronze, silver, gold services? Or do you have a, Stockman MSP standard? What does that look like for your MSP? Essentials?
You have gold and platinum.
Gold and platinum. John, you said essential. So I've got standard tech suite, complete care. Okay, and I assume that's an entire bundle of N number 16 to 40 things that get bundled in that. And then on top of that, do we have do we have folks with like a premier security stack, a premium security stack, some elite level? Is there some other, like what other names do we have for that? This is important because we're going to name these. So I'm super curious. Other people on the call are always asking, like, what else is everybody else using? So complete, we have essentials and complete. I like it. Pluto and Jupiter. Katrina, you said platinum and gold. Does one of those include higher end security pieces? What is that? What is the differentiator for you?
It actually includes on-site service as a part of the package.
Okay, perfect. Signature, advanced cybersecurity. So right now, I think most of us have some sort of standard, like this is our company package. We have a next tier, possibly another one. And how about, do we have a set of services that you would call ancillary services? They're nice to haves. I typically see things here like web development, printer copier services, phone services, things that that might not be relevant to them, but you offer, but not everybody gets it right out of the gate. What are those add-ons? Professional email essentials. Okay, we've got standard and complete, with complete including on-site. Got it. Okay, so that's like Katrina's. Security is a separate package called core. Access control or telco. I don't know what that second one means. You can tell I'm not an MSP.
Burglar alarms.
Oh, gotcha. I do know what that means. I just never shortened it. Thank you. Okay, so you have some ad hoc bolt-ons, yeah, based on specific industries as well. So I think it's important to point out those three types, regardless of what you call them, but you are going to need to come up with a name for them. So if you know the names and you already have them established, then we're going to roll with that. If you don't, we're going to make something up on the fly. And if we have to adjust later, we can. But I'm thinking we're going to start with our standard stack. Then we're going to have a premium stack of some sort. And then I'll call ancillary, but ad hoc is another, add-ons is another, something along those lines. So we are going to do this, and I'm going to jump into account settings. So head into account settings and click on stack management. Again, the last 2 weeks, we've looked over to see who has access to what. So if you don't see account settings, that means you're not a tenant admin. So you'll need to grab your tenant admin in order to do that. But you can certainly share this recording, or you can reach out to us and we can email you directions on how to get you that access if need be. So yours looks much different from this, right? Yours is empty, potentially. If you haven't been in customer success before, this potentially is empty completely. So the first thing we're going to do is in the upper right-hand corner, click on Stack Manager and click on Tags. And here we're going to define our tags. So click the plus sign and enter your tag names. Again, you can color code these. So you might want to think standard is a single color, right? I would put standard as green, and then my premium is blue, and ancillary is purple or something. But this is not the same red, yellow, green that is life cycly. So let's make your tags premium, standard, ad hoc, etc. I'll give you 1 minute on the clock. Okay, I'm thinking we all have tags. If you need more time, just shout out or put it in the chat. Now in the upper right, we're gonna click and go back to Stack Manager. And we have a list of services down the left-hand side. Does everybody see a list, or does anybody just have it completely blank? Okay. So choose one that you like. I'd like to set up maybe 2 all the way, and then we'll go into a specific client. And then at the end, I'll let you build as many as you have, because some of you have 17 that you want to add, and some of you have 43. So that is, that's just a lot of extra flex time. That's tricky to do on Zoom. So we're going to get set up 2 for everybody. So I'd like you to set them up, one that's in your standard services and one that is in either your premium or your ancillary ad hoc services. So find a service that you want to deal with and hit edit. When we get in here, if you don't want to call your service name PSA, you can rename it here, right? Give yourself a description. We're going to leave it active. So if you decide that half this list you don't have, you can go deactivate some of these. Okay, so leave it active. Agreement inclusion is important. For your standard services, you probably have agreement inclusion. That means for the base price, if they're paying you managed services and you want it included in the agreement, whether they're using it or not is irrelevant. If it's included in your agreement, check this button. By doing this, this means I'm going to be able to assign this particular line item to clients that get this, that get the tag associated to this product. So this is an important one because it's going to add some automation and give visibility into kind of the agreement inclusion across the line. And then select which tag or tags this is relevant to. If this was a minimum requirement and one of my standard services, I could select 2 tags so they can exist in multiple groups. So Katrina, this is probably most relevant for you. For gold and platinum, I suspect that platinum includes everything from gold and also on-site services and maybe some other things. So you will want to select both gold and platinum. Right? Because it's not one or the other. You're not a gold plus platinum. You're a gold and platinum is everything in gold plus other things. So that's why you might have it in 2 or more tags. So multi-select your tags if you need to, single select if that's more relevant. Some of you have a standard package and then extra services that are, it's different. So there are 2 types of ways to do that. And then down below, you select your preferred. You can multi-select. So if you have multiple products that you support, then multi-select. If you don't prefer, so let's use firewalls. What's everybody's favorite firewall? Just give me one. What do we like? Sophos? Can I shout out? SonicWall. Okay. So if I chose SonicWall, obviously in my firewall one, when I go to a client, if they use Sophos, I'm going to say they're only partially aligned to my services, not fully aligned. So it is important to pick the ones you prefer so we can move everybody else. Okay, so I see, Steve, you added tags, but they're not showing. Try log out and log back in. Tell me if it's still the case. Always our favorite.
And you can keep going.
Okay.
I know where to find you.
Yeah, you do. Okay, perfect. So then we're going to save this and move on and do a second one. So grab another tool. You should see this starting to populate up here. And if you have not done customer success before, you probably don't see anything under usage. So I'll give you 30 seconds to add one more. Okay. Two things that are important, maybe three. First, the top, we can of course search. So if you're like, oh, do they have firewall on the list? You can just type for it and we'll find it. You can filter for your tags. So after you've built this stack, if you want to filter for all your standard services to confirm that you've built your full set of standard services, you can grab them here. And then over in the right, if you need to restore previous items that you've deleted, maybe today you went and hit a bunch of things, you need to go chase them down. This is where you can chase them down. And then lastly, if you need to add a new stack item that we haven't thought about, maybe you just, there's some new type of item on the market, they will continue to come out there, right? You can just grab a new stack item. The other piece I wanted to mention, Steve, you can drag these in different orders so in here, I can drag these. So you could put them in the order that you want. And when you save that, it will actually use this order on the customer detail page. So it's not perfect, but it certainly gets you at least an ability to control it out of the gate. So any questions on this page about setting up your services before we get into a single client? So I think we all realize that while we just did 2, we could potentially have a lot more homework because you're going to have to go add all of your other services. And some of you that have done this a while ago, I would highly recommend, however you document your sort of annual check-in on things, what is your policy? What is your practice for adding new services to your catalog? If it's a thing you do yearly and then you redo contracts, you need to add to that process to go and update your stack and lifecycle insights, right? So if you're like, we do this monthly, then somebody should put it on their calendar that monthly we're going to check our stack and services and lifecycle insights. All right. Now select a customer that has those 2 services that you just aligned. So if you picked CSAT and backup, think about a client that has both of those that's in your drop down, grab it here, and then let's go into customer detail. Top right, grab the stack alignment page. Oh, actually, I'm a liar. Let's go back. Sorry. Let's go back to the profile page. In the profile page for creative designs, I have tagged this client as standard and ancillary. Matt, this will certainly be relevant for you. I don't have the list of people who are not showing their screen. They went back and back mapped this to you. So if you add tags, this will not, because you had set this up before we had tags, it's not going to delete and wipe everything else out because they went back for everybody that was already in there specifically and made sure it was associated. So they're well aware, but just in case you see anything funny, let me know, because they know that they had resolved that, but I just want to make you aware, you're not going to lose things by doing this. If I go align, so click into the client, sorry, I clicked into the pencil icon here to edit the profile. And here I can associate the ancillary and standard tag to this particular client. You will be able to add other services to the client. So that's no fear there. But what this does is this auto populates the stack to say, we know that this is relevant for this particular client. Okay. So now when I go into stack alignment, I can see I have things that are not in the standard or the ancillary stack. But when I filter by standard and ancillary, it filters all of those out. So it can pre-align my client to standards and services. So I'm going to look at the first 2 as my examples, and then I'm going to give you like 4 or 5 minutes to really work through one of these. So those folks listening to the recording can just fast forward or play along when they do. So let's go through a single one, and then I'll give you time to do it yourself. So I'm looking at alternate backup, which is an ancillary service my imaginary MSP offers. If I have some notes, I can add them here. So want to discuss this. Save. When I do, you'll see I've got an indicator that I have a note there. And when I hover over, I'll see what that note is. Okay. It is automatically checked if I had pre-checked it in the Stack Manager as applicable, right, to this client. Because this client is has the ancillary tag, I can grab it here. If I've got a service that is not associated to my stack, I would have to check this to turn it on for this particular client. So tagging auto checks it. By tagging the client, it auto checks it as applicable for the client. And that just means this is included in their agreement, or this is something I expect them to have. You then go over and in the drop down, select the version of the product that they have. You can add a new product if there's one not in the drop down list, depending on the service, depends on whether or not we have a full alignment there. So for discovery tools, for example, I could go down to the bottom and select other and type in what they have. If it is your preferred one, that's a beautiful thing. Then there's probably no opportunity, right? But you really want this whole line to be your preferred stack. If, like in CSAT, they had client heartbeat, but I wanted them to have Smileback preferred, that's where you say, oh, I've identified an opportunity. If they don't have anything at all, then there's certainly an opportunity there. The next column is alignment. This is, you manually select this. This is how we look at it. Green is fully aligned. You want them to have this product, they have this product, they buy it from you. So there's no opportunity there, right? Yellow might happen a couple different ways. They have a product, but it's not your preferred product. I see this most often with your baseline requirements that are expensive, like firewalls, for example. I have a lot of folks say, we rip and replace firewalls unless they just signed a 1-year contract. We'll let them run out that contract and then we'll replace it. So that might be a case where they've got a product. It's not your preferred product, but you agree to support it for a year, partially aligned. The other piece could be if they have your preferred product, but they don't buy it through you, right? So that's partially aligned. They're using the one you can support, but next time you replace it, it will be, it'll be something they purchase through you. And then red would be not aligned at all. The product you don't find. People are like, is that where you mean McAfee? That doesn't count. So whatever products you say, I'm not even going to consider that that's doing any part of this layered onion of security, or they don't have one at all, would be red. If it is included in the agreement, this will be checked. You can check this one, which means it's taken out of any potential opportunity because it's included in the agreement. So that's what the managed services piece is paying for. If it is not included and there is some opportunity, that is when you leave it blank. And now we can go add what opportunities there could be. You can manually enter, I think it's going to be about $200 MRR with a one-time project, non-recurring revenue, opportunity cost of $2,000 and save it. So you can just do the wildcard manual entry. However, one of the reasons we tell everyone to get VCIO first and build out the recommendations is because I can associate a recommendation to the item in order to populate the data. So I'm going to try it. Let's look at this documentation one. I'm going to uncheck agreement inclusion, and I could either start a brand new recommendation from here, or I could link to a recommendation. So this now gives me my full list of recommendations, and I could say it's this one. When I link it, it's going to say, oh, that one was declined. Let me grab a different one. I deleted a bunch of these earlier, so I might cause myself some trouble. There we go. I can see that I can arrow this over and it'll populate. So that arrow indicates, do you want me to fill in the blanks here with the dollars from the recommendation? Who was asking? John, it might have been you. Matt, for sure you agreed with it. So the first week, Steve, you might have said this as well. I know Greg brought it up, but I got a lot of head nods with it. And that was what we would really like is to be able to align a stack item to a recommendation template. Does that sound familiar to everybody? Okay. So I took that back as I promised I would and opened a whole can of worms. So I have some questions for you. Many of these are templates that require, like the recommendation templates have a quantity associated to it or some variables, right? So let me go back into the stack. This is like, I apologize for this because this is going to require thinking hats for a minute for sure, but trying to figure out the need here. So if I go into a stack component, what I would guess is that down here, you would want associate to a recommendation template, right?
If we really love it, if it was to a specific question, so you didn't have to worry if the same question was across different templates, but I know that might be a bigger challenge.
That actually would be an easier lift for us because the assessment question is red-green as opposed to a recommendation, which is what if you've renamed it? What if it's aligned to, like, it doesn't have dollar values in it yet? Do we offer you the ability to edit? Like, there's so many things that go on with recommendations that actually to an assessment question would be easier for us.
Yeah, sorry. I was in my mind, I was thinking assessment, but you were saying recommendation. So yeah, so assessment would be good. Going back to recommendation though, now I'm confused. What was your question on that? Sorry.
Okay, so, nope, totally fine. So in here, I agree. I think folks want to see this would be basically in an assessment item. You'd be able to link this to an assessment item. So if that assessment item was red, it would automatically say red and basically indicate that we need that. If it was green, it would be checked, no opportunity. I get that one. And that is absolutely probably the first thing we will do to get this alignment tighter. But the next piece is more around folks were asking for a recommendation to be associated to it so we could populate a recommendation. Would it just be an open template? Yeah, okay, so you could fill in the blank template. So if you already had a template, you could just link it to it. But if you didn't have one, you could just say, yep, that's the template I want.
Let me rephrase. So that if you had one that says, pick one of these of what's your phishing testing. If you had a template recommendation that would address that topic, we just want to connect those dots, right?
Okay. What if you had pre-filled a recommendation? Would we need to know that? Or would this be, are you thinking like a net new situation where like you suddenly buy a new phishing tool that you want to just push out to everybody to go build recommendations?
Yeah, well, because if you've already got a recommendation, you'd have already connected it to that stack.
Okay. When we start in the middle of something, it's always like, what do we have to go save everything we already did? Or can we kind of start new? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think there's the two things. There's the, okay, we're going through the stack alignment, firewall, they don't have our recommended firewall, and we have a blank template that we use when we want to go talk about Sonic Wall or whatever.
Okay.
Have it there, so we just know, boom, just go select it right now and create that recommendation custom for that customer. Is that what we're thinking?
That is less finagling than Nick thought it was going to require. So that's definitely a good answer based on his question. So basically it would be anything with a blank line item where when you hit the green plus sign, it would not start from scratch. You would just be able to, instead of having all of these templates, it would pre-populate it with like, we already know you want the migrate email template.
Yeah, right. Somehow, almost like you have this is our preferred solution, kind of if you had a checkbox next to
Is
Where
our
you can-
preferred.
where you could even have a couple, right, that you might have this topic, we might have a couple different standard templates for it. Is this, select the one you want.
I hear that a lot with backup options. Like we've got a lightweight backup option and then this heavyweight. So I might have two templates, but let's just narrow it down to those two.
Yeah, just make it easy for us to see, okay, this is normally the template we use to solve this problem.
Okay, that is actually less complicated than we were making it. So I'm glad I re-asked. So for anyone I just confused there, sorry, but I think I at least have something I can take back to them. Thank you, because a lot of folks had sort of thumbs up that one in the chat that day. So I've kind of talked through all of these pieces and parts along the way. There is, you can see if I go and edit something that it will, as soon as I tab away, it's going to ask me for a save, but it will also auto save on this page, just so you know. And it automatically updates the alignment tile, the MRR opportunity tile, and the NRR opportunity tile. So questions we have about this, ask yourself, do I know how to fill in all of these columns? And can I go back and do this? If you grabbed a tag with me, if you grabbed a tag up here, you can always go in and deselect it, or grab multiple tags if you want to see the other items. All right, so we're good from here. This then, when you fill this in, as you fill this in for your clients, two other things while we're on the page. First, you can filter this by recommendation status. So if you want to see what they have declined, and I don't have any, let me see, I can see what they have accepted. I would be able to immediately see which ones are good to go, right? These are approved, etc. So just keep that in mind. This feeds the stack alignment report. So in the left-hand side, I grab stack alignment. You can now filter this by, okay, these are all my standard items. These are all of the ancillary opportunities, right? If you're looking for some marketing fodder, okay, it looks like we should go do a marketing, campaign around CSAT or MDM, etc. On this page, you can swap rows and columns if you ever wanted all the companies in a row. They're doing some enhancements to this to help folks that have a lot of companies. So if this is scrolling, if this is way off the screen for you, they're putting some fixes in for that right now. You can filter, of course, by the account managers and the account groups that we talked about on the first week. The segments, you can multi-select companies, you can grab by company health as well. And on all of our reports, you can hide the charts if you just want more rows and columns to look at. You can always toggle on and off the charts. For the charts, you can also toggle off, like I just want to see, I'm trying to drum up some more work for my project team. I'm just going to keep the NRR opportunity to see what the project number, chart looks like, etc. So that's the other value of the chart appears. You can kind of take a look at the bits and pieces that you want.
Question, Marnie.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the tags, and obviously there's tags that are, if I look at it from the VCIO view, it says assessment item, and then you have this, and there's a drop down. I can see the CS tags, but they're kept completely separate. Is that correct?
Yes, they are separate. Yep. Good question, because we've got recommendation tags coming out this weekend. Yep. Now, some folks have talked about maybe creating common tags if they want to use that for their standard stack, right? So if that's what you've called it in CS, you might want to call it that in recommendations as well. That would make sense, but they're in fact two different tags right now.
That's what I was seeing. I just want to make sure.
Yep, correct. So then the last thing we want to talk about today, and before I give you some work time, is the goals. So if I go into individual customer detail and go to goals, I want to talk about first the long-term look at what we're going to do with goals. Not that long-term. We're hoping to do this in Q2. So one of the pieces is, as we're talking about an agenda builder, we're going to add first notes in the platform. So imagine a little flyout here where I could add notes along the way. One of those notes would be able to hit a checkbox and say, add this to an agenda item. Same thing for goals. When you're in a goal, our goal is not to have this accessible to clients, right? So if you're an external user, you don't get access to customer success. But folks have talked about wanting to be able to put the goals in Report Builder. So this toggle here is to show the customer. If I turn it off, it hides it from the customer. So when we have this as an agenda item builder, that's how we will use the goal. But I'm going to start a goal from scratch. So here we put strategic goal number 1 for the client. And this could be, close the Denton location and a due date if they have one. So maybe they're planning on doing that by the end of June. As we build out reporting for goals, we're going to start tracking percentages of goal completion. So even though right now we don't report off of that deadline goal, you're going to want to start having it in there, because when we have the report, it's going to use that to populate it. I can edit the goal. Nope, sorry. Click the drop down arrow and I can do a few things. I can create a task. So that just lives in here. So this would be all the papers. And I want to do this
Webinar will begin
end of
shortly.
March.
Please remain on the line.
And then I can add a new task if I want. I can link a recommendation. They're going to add the ability to add a new recommendation straight from here. But right now I can just link one, and I can also link a contract. So if doing that is relevant to their Great America leasing, then I can associate that in here. So all of these pieces and parts will start aligning percentages of I've done 20% of my tasks and 50% of my recommendations have been accepted and closed, that type of thing. That's why we want to put all those pieces and parts in here, even though the reporting isn't built yet, because as we get that high level reporting, you'll be able to look at that from a broader view than a single client. So thoughts about how folks are using this or want to use this? Any ideas? Can goals be generated from an SBR event like action items, tickets being created in ConnectWise? So not yet, Ricky, but I think that is a good plan, in the same place where you have like the follow-up notes. That's the idea of connecting the dots on them.
It seems almost like a Gantt chart, almost for like project management.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yep.
I like it's cool.
I think that's exactly what we're thinking for the goal, to be able to
Yep.
see when we're planning pieces and parts.
Is there, with that in mind, is there a way to make or is there in process ways to make this partner facing?
So more likely, I would like to hear what you want the partners to see, and we will put it in Report Builder. The intention is to not let them in the customer success side of the house.
Yes,
Because
agreed.
let's be honest, there's a lot of things over here that you wouldn't accidentally, so we don't even want to give
Agreed.
you the opportunity. We're going to save you from yourself.
Yep,
So-
no, agreed. That's what I would say. Is I would love to see this as a report. As
Yes.
able to import into like a report template or custom report builder.
Yep.
As something to put in and sort by, priority, timeline, due date, etc. Just like we do with recommendations.
That is a yes. Yeah, I'd love to hear if there are other parts over here that folks would like to see in Report Builder. John's got an idea.
Stack alignment.
I was gonna say, you want a stack alignment. Could you explain what you wanted to see? Because I would love to get everybody else's vote on this.
Yeah, so being able to look by partner at a report that shows what their stack alignment is based on what we are saying is applicable to them, whether they have it or not. That way I'm able to pull in a report that says, hey, this is what we offer. This is what we would recommend for you. Here's where you are with your health. Here's where you are with stack alignment, because we use a 7 pillars kind of model to show alignment and maturity of their organization. We also track using LCI completed projects on a timeline. So we do like a 2-year look back. So we can show, hey, this is what we've done. This is where we're going.
Yeah.
If I have a stack report that I can look based on Report Locker, I can look back and say, this was your stack alignment last year. Here's your stack alignment this year. It tells a story. So that piece would be incredibly powerful. Having the recommendations tied to it is just another piece that I can show in the reports. But whether it has a recommendation tied to it or not, I would want to see a report that shows stack alignment by what is applicable to that partner.
Yep.
And being able to pull that as a report.
So let me talk on stack alignment reporting, and let me write this down while I'm thinking about it. So this, I think they're working now on having this exportable, because a lot of folks want to be able to put this in, use this for reporting. But I'm hearing 2 types of stack alignment. One is for a single client. That is what you're speaking to. The other request, and Matt, you've mentioned benchmarking to me before, so I'm curious so one thing we would not do, I mean, we'll let you print this out with all the names on it, but what we wouldn't do is make it customer facing where you would automatically put everybody else's customer name in front of them. Is this one, Matt, that you would like to see a view of it, maybe not by dollar value, but by percentage, to gray out everybody else, but whatever company you're on, to say like, this is where you are, you're at 5%. All of the rest of our clients are like 70 to 90%, and you're 5% aligned to our stack. What do you say?
Yeah, so it would be essentially take all the customers, and after you filtered it down to the customers you want to use as the reference.
Yep.
Then take all the customers and have 2 columns. One is the customer that you're speaking with, so you've got their name at the top.
Yep.
And then all the others are just condensed into an average across them.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you can just compare that one customer against all your other customers.
Perfect.
Now, the key there is allow us to filter so that I'm not comparing a big customer to a small one type of thing, but.
Yep. That is, so you could use a count group now, right? So you could say,
Right.
this is the group I want to compare them to. Yep. Or some combo platter of tags and whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That makes sense. Any other pieces on this because we really are starting to look at, so we're looking at the momentum pieces that I've talked about, right? That's what we're getting some data in already, scoring QBRs, the stack alignment reporting, and pushing goals and notes as agenda items to Agenda Builder. So that's all development that we're sort of aiming toward. Is there anything else top of mind?
I appreciate the trying to save us from ourselves, but like the goal one specifically, I feel like is such a working document that I'd love to be able to use it in front of the customer. Can we just even just have that header bar at the top just be hidden so that we could go straight to goals? And I mean, it feels like sometimes these goals, you're helping the customer actually realize the major milestones they have to work through. And if you can do that in a live session, I'd love to be able to do that.
Well, so the way you said that, it makes me think, I wonder if in presentation mode, in the same way that when like contracts here is the VCIO contracts, right? But you can access it here. If you had customer success to just be able to see the goals tab over there, so you didn't have to come into customer success. Because to your point, you don't even really want to navigate through the tree to get here in front of them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So some insight, some visibility, and able to not just show it, but edit it and talk with them about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say, and Matt, sorry if I'm overstepping here, but I would find benefit in the goals section being exactly as it is, being able to see it on the VCIO side, just as a copy, and being able to show it in presentation mode,
Okay,
that
Okay.
would be easy. Or even if customers have access on the VCIO side, if you grant customer access to it,
Yeah,
them to
yeah.
be able to come in and update just an exact copy of it, because it's a great piece.
Yeah.
I love it. And could it just be a copy? That would be perfect.
and that's like I said, what they do with the contracts on the
Yeah.
CS house. You can access it, you can do all the things to it, you just don't have to come back for it. The
Yep.
other piece is you would only give permissions in here, so you would be well aware that like I just gave them permission to goals in here. Okay, I like that. And I think that aligns with it's the balance of save you from yourself, but still give access to the pieces they want. We always go for secure first, and then we'll go like, all right, I think we can let this out in the wild.
Well, we're also like in our organization, not to draw this out, but in our organization, we're giving access to LCI as users to our technicians and to our project managers. So if they're able to use this in cooperation on the VCIO side, it makes it even more users in our organization are utilizing LCI kind of as a single source of truth or as a single portal, which makes it even more valuable and important to our organization. So all of
That's
that
true.
is just really great.
Don't
And
have-
gives me less that I have to manage. I can say, project manager, you go do that.
You did good, perfect. Okay. Excellent. All right, well, I even beat my time from last week when I made it to 3:15. My thinking is now that folks that need to build their stacks can stay on and build stacks and ask questions.